Okay. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Shwapadamikam. Vandeyaham Sri Guru Sri Jutapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Shavadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Sri Visakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Shindu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyacha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Banebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Garadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam panglung hayate girim yat kripa tamahang vande Sri Gurun Dinataranam Pramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So welcome all the devotees to our regular English Bhakti Sastri class. So today we are continuing still the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita series. So yesterday we were discussing about how Lord Krishna instructed Arjuna. One second. Okay. Just perform your prescribed duties, even though if you are situated in the transcendental platform, or even if you are a self-realized person. In the beginning, Krishna explained to Arjuna that for a self-realized person, there is no duty bind him. But even then, in order to set up a good example to the general people, so Lord Krishna asked Arjuna to perform his prescribed duties. So Krishna also mentioned that even God, even Krishna himself perform his duty. So we are continuing our discussion from text number 28. Yeah, we left yesterday. Still on that discussion on performing one's duty with detachment for the sake of giving good example for the general people. Yeah. So text number 28. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty arm, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for the result. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport, the knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position. Oh, I think we have read this yesterday. He knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. Yeah. So we have discussed this yesterday, this verse, that a self-realized person completely understands that this material world is not a real place for himself. Yeah, awkward, the word awkward that used here by Srila Prabhupada, indicating that actually we try to find some happiness in this material world, but actually there is no perpetual happiness. Yeah. The next one, text number 29. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport, men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Okay, so Krishna is giving us another guideline in terms of preaching. So there are 10 offenses against the holy name. The 9th offense is that to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy names. Yeah. In fact, in the 18th chapter, we will find later where Krishna mentioned idam te na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachana na cha shushushave vacham na cha mamyo abhyasuyati. So Krishna told Arjuna that one should not instruct this transcendental subject matter to a person who idamte na tapaskaya, those who are not austere, not tapaskaya, na cha shushushave vacham, one who doesn't want to listen, one who doesn't have faith. Na bhaktaya, to the non-devotees, Lord Krishna mentioned, because as Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport that non-devotees, they will not appreciate Krishna consciousness activities or Krishna consciousness philosophy. So at least we have to preach to those who wants to listen. Yeah. So that's actually Krishna's instruction. But Srila Prabhupada mentioned here that the devotee is actually more kind than Krishna himself. Why Krishna forbid us to preach to the faithless person? Because they don't have faith, and as a result, they may commit some offense. They may commit some offense to the Lord, blaspheming the devotees also. So Lord Krishna doesn't want that happen. But as devotees, so it doesn't matter whatever may happen to him. So his business is just to preach Krishna consciousness. Yeah, of course, this pastime of Jaga and Madai, when Lord Nityananda approached them, asking them to chant the holy name. So that's actually the manifestation of a devotee's mercy. So it doesn't matter. Even after Lord Nityananda being hit by the broken clay pot, yeah, still he asked them to chant the holy name. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada mentioned devotees even more kind than the Lord. There are so many injunctions, there are so many rules and regulations set in the Vedas, but Srila Prabhupada explained this is the only one that devotees doesn't want to follow. Not to preach to those who doesn't want to listen. So devotees will always preach to anybody, yeah, without any discrimination. Text number 30. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya dhyatma chetasa nirarshirni mamu bhutva yudhyashva vigata jwara. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So finally here, Krishna encouraging Arjuna again and again to fight. Okay, if you don't want to be affected by sinful reactions, so you just work according to your prescribed duty. With detachment, you have to work. Kindly others remain muted. Later, if you have some question, you may raise your hand and ask question. Okay. So here, Lord Krishna asks Arjuna to give up the result of his karma, of his activities, and just surrender all the result to Krishna. Yeah. So nirashari means without desire for profit, and nirmamaha means without ownership. So very significant words here. Nirashari nirmamo bhutva. Yeah. Without desire for profit and without ownership. So Srila Prabhupada gave an analogy in his purport. Yeah, the cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. So naturally, when we work, the result is awarded by Krishna. Therefore, Lord Krishna here advising Arjuna that the result should be offered to Krishna. Yeah. Just like the cashier here. So if you happen to see or even experiencing working in the front desk, you may count a lot of money, but that money is not belong to you. So similarly, in this case, the Isavasya principle is applicable. Yeah, everything belongs to Krishna. Isavashamidam Sarvam. Everything belongs to Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. Yeah. Aham evasam evagre nanyat yat sat asat param paschat aham yat etacha yovasishyeta sosmyaham. Yeah, this is the first Chatusloki of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the second canto. Yeah. Aham evasam evagre. Before the creation, the material creation manifested. So the only person that exists is Krishna. And then while the creation is running, so Krishna is the maintainer. Yeah, Krishna is existing. And after the material creation being destroyed, who remain exists is Krishna. So everything belongs to Krishna. Yeah. Text number 31. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and therefore is eternally true without exception. Yeah. So because Krishna is a person who established Dharma, yeah, Dharma to Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. So Dharma emanates directly from Lord Krishna. So here in the lecture, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, so when a man comes to this knowledge that I'm serving, so why not to serve? Why not serve the Supreme? This is knowledge. This is perfection of knowledge. Nobody can be freed from being a servant. Either you become a servant of God or you become a servant of dog. You must be a servant. So the intelligent person, a wise person, he prefers to servant of God instead of becoming servant of dog. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada is very heavy actually in this lecture. Yeah, in the 1969 in Los Angeles. Yeah. So nobody can be free from serving. Even the number one person in a country, for example, like a king or a president, still he's serving. It seems that he's the topmost person in the country, but he's serving his citizens. Yeah, he's managing his citizens, he's managing his country. Yeah, ruling over the country. Still he's serving. For example, like a father also. A father is a leader in a family, right? But still he's working. He's the one who works so hard to maintain the family. That means he's the servant. Yeah, he's the servant. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned, no one can avoid this position of being servant. Yeah, because that's our natural position, being servant. So Prabhupada mentioned that, okay, instead of being servant of dog, why not to become a servant of God? Yeah. So one time I was, I remember when I was in Cambodia, I was chanting my rounds in one park. Yeah. So that was early in the morning in one park, and there's different people. Some people doing, running, jogging. Some people just have a walk with their dogs. Some people just relaxing. So there was one man walking with his dog, and then so his dog now in the park passed stool. So the dog is past tool, and what the man's doing. So he took from his bag, he took a plastic bag, and then took that stool of the dog, wrap it nicely, and put inside his bag. So he is serving his dog. Yeah, he claimed himself to be the master of that dog, but actually he's serving his dog, even when the dog passed stool. So very carefully he took the stool of that dog. So similarly, our natural constitutional position is being servant. So of course, as devotees, we understand that service to God, service to Krishna, service to the devotees, yeah, that's the topmost. So therefore, Lord Krishna is advising here to Arjuna that you must perform your prescribed duties and perform it as a service to me. Yeah. Text number 32. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So in the lecture, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, therefore, one who disagrees to become servant of God is befooled. It is said, but those who, out of envy, he is constitutionally servant, but he is envious. Why shall I become God's servant? I shall become God. You see, everyone is claiming, oh, everyone is God. Why? What is the use of becoming servant of God? I'm God. So this is enviousness. Yeah. This is actually the reason why we are here in the material world, because we want to be God. So general understanding of God means controller. So we want to control something. We want to become a controller up to some degree. Yeah. We want to become controller, and we are envious of Krishna. Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani samoha sarge janti parantapa. So this is the reason why we are here, because icha means material desire. So material desire means desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. So when we have desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, we have to understand that it's actually material desire. And then dvesa means envious. We are envious that why only Krishna is God. I also want to become a God. Therefore, this little corner of the whole creation is given to us to exhibit our propensity, our desire to become God up to some level, certain level. Yeah, we are falsely trying to be controller of something. Yeah, because in the spiritual world, Krishna is the only controller, of course. Even in the material world, also Krishna is the controller. But because we envious of Krishna, that he's God, everybody is adoring Krishna, worshiping Krishna. So here we are in the material world. We want to be worshipped. We want to be praised. Yeah. So we exhibit that tendency here in the material world. Sarge Janti Parantapa. So our destination here is here because we are envious of Krishna. The next text number 33. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? So here, Lord Krishna is advising Arjuna that everybody is impelled by the three modes of material nature. Yeah, according to our guna, according to our nature. So we have certain karma activities. So according to the varnas of a person, so there is a description that the Brahmana influenced by the modes of goodness, and then Kshatriya influenced by mode of uh, Rajasic, yeah, passion, and then the Vaishya mixed between passion and ignorance, and then the Sudra is influenced by the modes of ignorance. Yeah. So Arjuna being Kshatriya, he's passionate, because Kshatriya's nature is that always full of Aishwarya Bhava, yeah, full of opulence, wants to be rich, wants to be control over something, yeah. And Kshatriya by nature, generally they don't humble, they are not humble, yeah. And then in the case of fighting in the battlefield, how can a person fight if there is no anger, if there is no passion, yeah. So Arjuna is being advised here by Krishna that, well, you have belonged to Kshatriya, and this is your duty according to your guna. Uh, you are impelled by the modes of passion. Well, of course, the Pandavas, the whole Pandavas, they are pure devotees of the Lord. Uh, but when a person acts according to his varna in order to serve the Lord, so sometimes he just act according to the guna that influencing that particular varna. For example, Arjuna, he is a kshatriya, so he has to fight. Yeah, of course, his fighting is not whimsical. His fighting is not whimsical, but that's actually fight a war under the instruction of the Lord. Yeah. So that's actually his dharma, kshatriya dharma. So there's a question here: if we all are helplessly forced to act according to our natures, what is the use of so many rules in the Shastra to regulate our activities? So here Krishna mentioned that everybody is forced to act according to his own nature, according to the three modes of material nature. Yeah. Then sometimes we may take granted of this statement saying that, well, I may commit mistake because I'm influenced by the three modes of material nature. And that's actually not me. I'm not the person who wants to do this, but somehow or other, as if being forced, I'm acting in such a way. So here, if we are all helplessly forced to act according to our natures, what is the use of so many rules in the Shastra to regulate our activities? So the answer is that in the next text, there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So the injunction in the Vedas meant to regulate, although we have some attachment for sense gratification, for example, but that sense gratification should be also regulated. Yeah, it's not that we are enjoying sense gratification like the animals without any rules and regulation, but it should be regulated. So slowly, by rules and regulation, when we follow while enjoying the senses, but we are following rules and regulation, so we become purified, and gradually we will come to higher understanding. Yeah. Those who are Krishna, Prabhupada mentioned, those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification, but those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulation of the revealed scriptures. For example, like eating meat. Yeah, for example, like eating meat. Those who disregard the rules and regulation of the Vedas, so they just eat meat as they want. But there is an injunction that actually one is allowed. This is only for the Sudra, Sudra and Kshatriya. Yeah, Sudra and Kshatriya are allowed to eat meat. But that eating meat is not on a daily basis. Yeah, on some certain day. And then while slaughtering the animal, this is called mimamsa. There is a mantra that need to be chanted, and this is called mimamsa. Mimamsa means now I eat you. In our next life you will eat me. So that's the rule. Yeah, and then I read somewhere that there was injunction. There is an injunction for those who are still addicted to meat, so they are allowed to eat meat once a month, and that's also only for the worshipper of Kali. Yeah, worshipper of Kali. So sometimes Kshatriya is also allowed to eat meat. Yeah, but Srila Prabhupada never uh, encouraged the slaughterhouse. So the slaughterhouses is actually so horrible that there's no regulation. There's no regulation that every day thousands of animals being killed. Yeah, but those there is injunction. Those who still addicted to meat, so he himself should kill the animal and he himself should cook the animal. Yeah, not that we are purchasing meat from the slaughterhouse. So the point here is that even while enjoying the senses, one must follow rules and regulation. For example, those who cannot remain a Naistiki brahmacharya, they should get married and enjoying the senses according to rules and regulation. Yeah. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. Yeah. But one who follows the rules and regulation of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by sense object. So when we follow rules and regulation, at least we restrict ourselves up to some degree, even while enjoying the senses. And that's actually help us to control gradually our senses. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, again, Srila Prabhupada is making a very clear point here. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. So ultimately, we have to avoid all kinds of sense enjoyment, because even while following the rules and regulation in enjoying the senses, there is a chance for us to fall down. We may get addicted. So therefore, Prabhupada mentioned here, by all means, should be given up, yeah, should be avoided. But instead of unrestrictedly enjoying the senses, so enjoying the senses while following rules and regulation is good enough to control our senses up to some degree. But when we come to the higher understanding, so we have to give up all kinds of material sense gratification. Still on the same verse, Srila Prabhupada giving an analogy. One has to follow those rules and regulation unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulation may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always the chance of an accident even on the royal road. Yeah, this is very famous analogy that Srila Prabhupada uh, used to give in his lectures. Yeah. Even in the royal road, seemingly there is no dangers. Still, sometimes we may stumble and fall. So similarly, although we are following rules and regulation while enjoying the senses, so there is a chance to fall down. Yeah. Text number 35. So here, Arjuna is advised by Lord Krishna that don't artificially try to give up your duty and try to engage in somebody else's duty. Yeah. Shreyan swadharmo viguna paradharmat swanustita swadharme nidanam shreya paradharmo bhaya vaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty. For to follow another's path is dangerous. Yeah. So we have to remember that in the second chapter, Arjuna said that Shreyo Bhoktum Vaikshamapi Haloke Hatvartakamam to Gurun Ihaiva. Yeah, he wants to give up his position of being Kshatriya and engage as, artificially trying to take sannyas immediately, trying to live like simple sannyas, just live by begging. So this is not at all a proof. Yeah. Because Arjuna, by nature, actually, Kshatriya doesn't beg. Yeah. They would fight to get something. They don't beg. Yeah. This is Kshatriya's nature. Yeah. Chivalry. And interestingly, Krishna mentioned here that better to, Swayan Swadharma Viguna, better to engage in one's own prescribed duties, although imperfect, than to engage in somebody else's duty perfectly. But if we think that how can we perform somebody else's duties perfectly, meanwhile, if we cannot perform our own duty perfectly, first of all, we don't know what is the business of others. Yeah. Therefore, Krishna mentioned here, paradharmo bhaya vahaha, because trying to engage in somebody else's duty is full of dangers, because we don't know. We don't know their duty. We know normally what is our duty, what needs to be done, what should to be done from our side. Yeah. For example, if we are not trained to become a pujari, okay, if we are not trained to become a pujari and suddenly we just enter the altar room and try to do something there, so it doesn't make sense, right? So better to perform our own duty happily than try to imitate somebody else's duty. Yeah. So Lord Krishna is advising Arjuna here, better just continue your prescribed duty being Kshatriya, so fight on behalf of the Lord, fight on behalf of Dharma, religious principles. In that way, actually, your life will become successful. Don't artificially try to become a humble Brahmana to beg, yeah, living by begging. Srila Prabhupada in his purport mentioned, when one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. Yeah. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana or a Brahmana may act as Kshatriya. So, interestingly, Srila Prabhupada mentioned here, if one is situated on the transcendental level, so he can act freely because he is no longer influenced by the three modes of material nature. But now, the situation of Arjuna here, well, of course, he's a pure devotee, but now due to the Yoga Maya potency of the Lord, he is being influenced by that. And then artificially, seemingly, he is like, ordinary Grihastha Kshatriya, ordinary Kshatriya Grihastha, who is attached to his family members. So Arjuna is acting in such a way, showing to the whole world that now he is actually under the influence of the three modes of material nature. Therefore, Krishna is giving instruction like this. You are still under the three modes of material nature, still under the control of the three modes of material nature. You are being influenced. So better to act according to your varna, particular varna. But Srila Prabhupada explained, if one is transcendentally situated, transcendental means, above the three modes of material nature. So he can act as he wants because nothing can bind him. Yeah. For example, Parasuram. Yeah. Parasuram, he is the son of a Brahmana. So he was acting as a Brahmana, but he's God himself. So now he fight also, and he killed 21 times the demoniac Kshatriyas. Yeah, 21 times. So he's acting as Kshatriya, although he's a Brahmana. Well, because he's transcendently situated, he's the incarnation of the Lord himself. For example, like Krishna also. Krishna, He's, he doesn't have any Varna, of course, but when he was in Vrindavan, he act as a Vaishya, and then here he act as Kshatriya, yeah, because he's transcendentally situated. Yeah, this is the conclusion of this part of discussion. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement. So that part of discussion about karma yoga, performing one's prescribed duty, just, you know, perform one's prescribed duty with detachment from the result, and acting as a matter of setting up a good example for people in general. So that was advised by Lord Krishna to Arjun, because Arjuna didn't want to fight. And Lord Krishna said, okay, all right, if you are situated in the transcendental level, then that's fine. Nothing can bind a person who is transcendentally situated, but still, in order to set a good example, yad yada charati sreshtas, you must follow your duty. You must act according to your varna, kshatriya dharma. Yeah. So by karma yoga, actually one becomes free from the sinful reaction. Yeah, because karma yoga means we are connecting uh, ourselves, our activities, and the result is offered to Krishna. Therefore, Lord Krishna mentioned here that, okay, just perform your duty, and as a matter of offering to me, you offer your work to me. So in that way, you will be free from reaction, karmic reaction. All right. So the next part of our discussion is that now Lord Krishna, having touched the point of the three modes of material nature. So generally, the modes of ignorance and passion, most of us being influenced by these two modes of nature. Well, sometimes we see sattvic people, but very, very hard. Yeah? Hardly we see a person who is completely sattvic. Yeah? So most of us influenced by the modes of Rajogun and Tamogun. Therefore, in our next part of our discussion today, we are going to discuss about how Lord Krishna uh, instructing Arjuna about beware of lust and anger. So lust and anger actually the criteria of a person being influenced by the mode of passion. Yeah. So Arjuna asked Krishna what forces us to act sinfully, abandoning one's prescribed activities, karma. So of course, it's already being described by Krishna, by Lord Krishna, that we are forcefully acting according to the modes of material nature in which we are influenced by. Yeah. Krishna describes our eternal enemy in the form of lust. And one can conquer lust by working in Krishna consciousness with steady intelligence, fixed in knowledge of one's pure identity. So we start this discussion by Srila Prabhupada's lecture, where he mentioned, anyway, this begging business is not for a householder or a military man. Therefore, Krishna says that don't try to imitate the business of a sannyasi or a brahmana. You are a kshatriya. Your duty is to fight, so you should follow your own prescribed duty. Don't try to imitate others. But one can attain perfection by being engaged in his own occupation, provided he does it in Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna is asking him to fight, and he is a professional fighter. So if he fights in accordance with the order of Krishna, there is his perfection. So this is the purport, Srila Prabhupada said. Yeah. Continuing that part of discussion. So now we are entering another part of discussion. So text number 36, Arjuna said, So he's asking here, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Yeah. Sometimes we may experience this also, that we know philosophy, but sometimes we just, as if we are being forced to act sinfully. So how is that? Arjuna is asking here. Srila Prabhupada mentioned, a living entity as part and parcel of the Supreme is originally spiritual, pure and free from all material contaminations. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with the material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation and sometimes even against his will. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the super soul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. So interesting. We are the swamsa of the Lord. Swamsa means part and parcel. Yeah, mama ivam, so jiva loke. Jiva bhuta sanatan. We have the same nature as the Lord. Yeah, being always pure, constitutionally being always pure, but because we are associating with the modes of material nature, karanam guna sangasya. So guna sanga, we are associating with some modes of material nature. So we become contaminated. Yeah. Yaya samohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manutenatam tatkritam chavipadyate. So that verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yaya samohito jiva, the jiva, although he is paropi manutenatam, paro means above this conception, materialistic conception, because the jiva is always pure by its constitutional position is always pure. Yeah, but yaya samohita jiva, he becomes bewildered. Samohita becomes illusion. Paropi manutenartham, although he is actually beyond, above para, the material concept of life. Tat kritam chavipadyate. How he's bewildered? Because he's associating himself with the modes of material nature, and then tat kritam chavipadyate. Triguna atmakam. Trigunatmakam paropi manutenatam tat kritam chavipadyate. Then he start thinking that I'm the body, I'm the product of this material nature. So that's how the soul bewildered, because karanam guna sangasya, associating with the material modes of nature, and then sadasad yoni janmashu. So he will meet good or bad. Yeah, sad asad, sad asad, good and bad. Uh, Yoni janmashu. So he may take birth in a rich family. He may take birth as poor person, he may take birth as animal, demigods. So these are depending on the karanam guna sangarsha, depending on the modes of material nature we are associating with. So now here Arjuna is asking, sometimes we are acting sinfully, as if we are being forced. What is the cause? Of course, Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport that the cause is not the super soul. Sometimes we get the instinct, good instinct, that actually the super soul try to guide us from within. But when we act sinfully, so that is actually not from the super soul, but what is there will be described in the next verse. Yeah, that's actually the three modes of material nature. Yeah. Kama Esa, Lord Krishna replied, Kama Esa, Krodha Esa, Rajo Guna Samud Bhavaha, Mahasanu Mahapapma Videnam Iha Vairina. So Iha Vairina means the greatest enemy. What forces us to act sinfully? Sometimes we are unwilling to do that, but still we are being forced, and finally we do it. You know? So Kama Esa, Krodha Esa, Rajo Guna. So by the influence of the modes of Rajogun, so lust appear, anger appear. Yeah? The Supreme Personality of God, it is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transform into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Yeah. Vidyanam iha vairinam. Iha vairinam means the greatest enemy. So lust is our greatest enemy. And from lust, what Krishna mentioned here, from lust later transform into krodha, into wrath, into anger. Why? Because it is the nature of lust, cannot be satisfied. Yeah, lust can never be satisfied. Uh, there's one nice verse from the 9th canto when Yayati gave instruction to Devayani. How is that start? Buya eva vivardate. That's how it's ends actually. Buya eva vivardate. Na jatu kama kamanam upabogena samyati. How is a Krishna word? Meva buya eva vivardate. So na jatu kama kamanam. So the kama, lust, na jatu, can never be satisfied. Just like we try to distinguish fire by supplying the fire fuel. If we think that by supplying the fire fuel, the fire will be satisfied and subdue itself, it will not work. But the fire will flame up bigger and bigger and demanding for more fuel. Yeah, for more fuel. So similarly, lust is like that. If we think that by gratifying this lust, fulfilling that desire, that particular desire, we may feel satisfied and stop desiring. Actually, that's a wrong understanding, because when one desire is fulfilled, another desire, greater desire, will appear. Okay, that's the nature of lust, of kama. And then most of the time our desire is unfulfilled. And what next comes when the desire is unfulfilled? Anger. We become angry. We become angry when our desire is unfulfilled. When it is fulfilled, we become greedy, lobha. When it is unfulfilled, we become angry, frustrated. Yeah. And this is due to the influence of the modes of passion. Yeah. Rajoguna samudbhava. So rajoguna samudbhava. And then how to subdue this lust? Yeah. Simply by the process of devotional service, especially hearing more about Krishna's pastime. Yeah, tada rajastamo bhava kamaloba dayaschaye chitta ekair anavidam stitam satve prasidati. So tada rajas tamo bhava, by the influence of rajo and tamo, kama loba dayaschaye, kama and loba appear. Kama loba dayaschaye chitta ekair anavidam. But if we use our mind to concentrate on the lotus feet of the Lord by the process of hearing, yeah, stitam satve prasidati, one will be gradually purified and situated in the platform of goodness, and he will become prasidati, he will become happy. Yeah. So lust is the greatest enemy. Therefore, we have to conquer this. Yeah, by all means. Yeah, by all means. Otherwise, our life is always being disturbed, because of this hankering. Kangsati, hankering. Yeah, the lust. If we analyze the life of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, especially when the Pandavas is being exiled in the forest, yeah, what Duryodhana doesn't have? He has everything. He has opulence, wealth, nice food, women, this and that. But because of lust, he's always demanding for more. So his mind always disturbed. And meanwhile, the Pandavas, they are in the forest, simply living depending on the Lord's mercy. Yet they always being satisfied and happy. Yeah. Even before the fight, why the battlefield took place? Because Duryodhana did not agree to give, of course, the Pandava was asking only for 5 villages for each of them, because as Kshatriya, you need to rule something. And they're not asking of half of the kingdom. No, they were asking only for 5 villages, one for each. But Duryodhana said, no, not even in the size of a tip of a needle, I will give to them. No, sorry. You see how greedy Duryodhana is. He has everything, but because of this lust, so he always hankering for more. Yeah. Even when actually the Pandavas, they don't want Hastinapur at all, because they have Indraprastha already. Indraprastha, even more opulent than Hastinapur. But of course, Duryodhana also wants this Indraprastha, and with the help of Sakuni, so they betrayed the Pandavas and finally exiled them to the forest. So this is the nature of lust. Another hand, also like another example, like Ravana. What Ravana doesn't have? His palace is made of gold. His palace made of gold. Yeah, nice food, this and that facility, but because of lust, he cannot control his desire to enjoy Sita, and that's actually bring destruction. There are so many examples. Great personalities falls from their position just because of lust. Like Vishwamitra Muni, a great sage, also become a victim of lust. Yeah. Menaka came and he fell down, because of lust. So Vidyanam iha vairinam. This is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So Srila Prabhupada gave an analogy here, just like, milk. Get in touch with tamarind, what happened? It becomes yogurt. So similarly, the pure soul, the soul is pure, right? As what we discussed previously. The soul is pure, but when it's karanam guna sangha, associating with the modes of nature, especially with rajogun and tamogun, so it becomes seemingly contaminated. The sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust, as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Yeah. So the so-called love in the material world is actually lust only. Love is only, Prabhupada explained, love means when we have this genuine feeling toward the Lord, only to Krishna. But when a young girl say that I love you to a young boy, or a young boy say that to young girl, actually that's not real love, because there's material motivation to enjoy. But when we approach the Lord having this feeling, loving feeling, and that is bhakti, so we don't want anything, we just want to serve Krishna, that's it. So because there's no lust in the spiritual world. So in order to exhibit that lust, we have to come down here, because this world is actually the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Ya urdhva mula madasakam. So the root is up, the branch downward. Aswatam prahuravyayam. Aswatam means the what is that tree? Banyan tree. Yeah, aswata is banyan tree. So this material world is compared just like a banyan tree. You will study this in the 15th chapter, the beginning of 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this banyan tree is, upside down. Urdhva the root is upward, and adasakam, the branch is downward. So it's just a reflection of the original tree. Prabhupada said, nowhere we see this kind of tree in this material world, but we can experience it by seeing the reflection of a tree on the water. For example, if there is a big tree on the banks of a lake, so on that lake we see that the reflection of the original tree. So the original tree is the spiritual world, and the reflection is the material world. So the reflection has its root up and the branches down. So love in the spiritual world becomes lust in the material world, because it just, you know, the opposite things. Just like when we see ourselves in the front of the mirror, when we raise our right hand in the mirror, what we see, that person in the front of us is raising his left hand. It's just the opposite. Yeah. Okay, Srila Prabhupada explained, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into rust. When rust is transformed into illusion, rust is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Yeah, remember in the second chapter we have discussed Dhyayato Visayan Pumsa Sangaste Supajayate. Sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodo vijayate krodat bhavati samoha samoha smriti vibrama smriti brahmsad buddhinaso buddhinasat pranasati. These are the 8 cycles that all of us should memorize. These 2 verses actually very important. Yeah, dhyayato visayan. Start from contemplating sense object. Sangaste supajayate, and then attachment naturally arise. Sangat sanjayate kama. When there is attachment, there is lust. Kamat krodo vijayate. From kama appear anger. Krodat bhavati samoha. After being after anger, so illusion start. Therefore, normally don't instruct someone who is in anger. Because instead of listening to you, he will become even more angry. Yeah, this is actually a sign for a grihastha. Yeah, if your husband or your wife not in a good mood, don't try to tell or agitated. Yeah. So krodat bhavati samoha, because when there is anger, there is samoha means illusion. We cannot think properly. Samoha smriti vibrama, and then loss of memory, smriti bramsad buddhi naso. After memory is lost, buddhi nasa. We lost our intelligence. And then buddhi nasat pranasat. Yeah. Welcome to the material world. Yeah, that's the science here. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Yeah. Another symptoms of lust is attachment. So we are here due to our attachment. The origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also the Supreme. Interesting, Prabhupada mentioned here. So by reading this, we come to know that, okay, it's lust, but ultimately, who is the source? Krishna. Yeah, Aham Sarvasya Prabha, where everything emanates from Krishna, including lust. But although that lust comes from the Lord, actually, it's just the perverted reflection. Actually, its love manifests from Krishna. But because we misuse it, so it turns into lust. Yeah. So in that sense, the lust is coming from Krishna. The source of the lust is Krishna, but Krishna doesn't have any intention to create lust. He just gives us love. But when we misuse that love, so it turns into lust. Okay. So we should not blame Krishna here. Both lust and rust can be spiritualized. Okay, interesting. Lust and anger can be utilized in Krishna's service. Yeah. Tasmad vairanu bandena nirvairina bhayena. Snehat kame nawa yunjan katanchin na iksate prita. So Narad Muni is explaining to Yudhishthira Maharaj that it doesn't matter whatever your motivation when you approach Krishna, you will become purified. Yeah. Tasmat vairanu bandena. If you approach Krishna in the mode of vaira, means fighting, inimical, still you will get benefit. For example, like Ravana or Hiranyakasipu, they are approaching Krishna in the mode of being enemy. But what happened? Because the Lord killed these demons directly, so they get purification, they get liberation. And then nirvairena, no enemical, means in devotion. Snehat, attachment. Attachment, snehat, just like the Pandava attached to Krishna. Snehat kamena, lusty, just like the gopis, the Braja gopis. They have this lust, but because their lust is directed toward the Lord, so their life is actually benefited. Yeah. So katanchin na ishate pritak, because Krishna doesn't want to see our fault. Na iksate pritak. He just want to see that, okay, this man is approaching me. That's all right. Doesn't matter whatever his motivation. But of course, Rupa Goswami explained that, for example, like the demons, Hiranyakasipu or Kamsa, Bhaya, due to fear, Kamsa becomes Krishna conscious, 24 hours thinking about Krishna. 24 hours Kamsa thinking about Krishna, but that is not favorable, because bhakti means anukulyena Krishna anushilanam, thinking about Krishna favorably. Yeah. So the way how Kamsa think about Krishna cannot be counted as bhakti. But lust can be utilized in the Lord's service, like the gopis, and anger can be utilized in the Lord's service. For example, Arjun is using his anger while fighting, and also Ravana, he burned Lanka in anger. Yeah. So anger and lust can be utilized in Krishna's service, but ignorance, it's hard to utilize in Krishna's service. Impossible. Okay, this is from Srila Prabhupada's purport. Text number 38. Yeah. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Yeah. Each of us has lust, but the thickness of that lust is varied, not the same. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy lust by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada many times mentioned that this Krishna consciousness movement is not meant for the cats and the dogs. This Krishna consciousness is meant only for human. Yeah, meant only for human, because this is the suitable body in which we can engage in the service of the Lord. Yeah, Prabhupada explained that if I ask this cat or this dog to chant Hare Krishna, they will not chant. Yeah, hey Mr. Cat, hey Mr. Dog, please chant Hare Krishna. So they will not chant. But if you ask human, there is possibility for them to engage in the Lord's service. Well, of course, we find the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was a small boy, Nimai. So he was playing, and then he found one puppy, yeah, one puppy alone, left by its mother. So Nimai took home this puppy, and then Sachimata said, no, 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 it's Muchi. You should take bath. If you touch this dog, you should take bath. And Nimai said, no, no, I want to keep this puppy. And then Sachimata just released that dog. And then this dog actually when the dog ran here and there. So this dog constantly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. You see, simply getting a slight association with Nimai. So this dog become a pure devotee. But of course, that's like extraordinary pastime. Only Krishna can do that. No, not us. So this Krishna consciousness is meant only for the human, not for the animal. But then, if a human doesn't understand about dharma, dharmo ite samadhiko viseso dharmena hina pasubi narana, so that human is considered to be not better than the animal. So here, the purport of this um, verse is that just like the baby entangled inside the covered by embryo, so this is the example of a soul is covered in a tree body, completely helpless, like the baby inside the womb is helpless, cannot move, it's so narrow space. So the soul entangled in the tree body is helpless, hard, not even moving, and then just like the dust in the mirror, this is compared just like the soul in the body of animals. Yeah, they can move, they can communicate among themselves. And then just like fire covered by smoke, this is compared just like the soul inside the human form. Yeah, because there are different degrees of discovering. So if we cannot see the baby inside the womb, right? And when there is dust, a lot of dust in the mirror, hardly we can see. We may see, but it's very hard. But fire covered by smoke, doesn't matter how thick the smoke is, still we can see the flame of the fire. So it's invoked very easily. So similarly, human form of life is the lightest covering of lust, compared to the animals and also tree body. Okay. And then text 39, avritam jnanametena jnanino nitya vairina. So nitya vairina means eternal enemy. Kama rupena kauntiya. Please note that the eternal enemy is in the form of kama. Yeah. Kama rupena kauntiya duspurena analinacha, can never be satisfied. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Duspurena nalenacha. Nitya Vairina means eternal enemy. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, Srila Prabhupada mentioned. And thus, this material world is called Maitunya Agara, or the shackles of sex life. So this is the biggest force in material world, yeah. Whether the jivas in the human form of life or in the animal's form of life, sex is center of all activities. Why people needs to work so hard? Okay, to become rich, to become respected in the society, and ultimately what? By the end of the day, to attract the opposite sex. Yeah. So Nitya Vairana means the eternal enemy. Kama Rupena, yeah, in the form of lust. And Duspurena Nalena can never be satisfied. Duspurena, this word dus means very difficult. Yeah. Text 40, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders them. Yeah. So these are the three sitting places of lust: senses, mind, and intelligence. Mind is the center of all activities of the senses. Yeah. In fact, mind is actually the leader of all senses. Yeah, it's subtle. Mind is the subtle senses. And thus, when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification, and as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Repositories of lust. lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter. And thus, with the mind and senses, the spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistake this as true happiness. Yeah, so this is from Srila Prabhupada's purport. So mind, senses, and intelligence. Yeah, Prabhupada mentioned interestingly in the lusty intelligence. Normally, if we are intelligent, we should not become a victim of lust. What Prabhupada means when he said that lusty intelligence. So we are using our intelligence in enjoying the senses to plan how to enjoy the senses better and better. This is called lusty intelligence. Yeah. All right, we have 4 minutes from now. I just want to finish this chapter. So Krishna is giving you direct information. Here's your enemy. Where? Senses, mind, intelligence. There's lust. So if you can understand, here is the enemy. And if you try to drive out the enemy, you take precaution. What is that precaution? You engage your senses in Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious activities. The lust will have no more place to attack your senses or sit on your senses. You engage your mind in Krishna, immediately the lust from the mind will go away. Similarly, you apply your intelligence, how to work on Krishna consciousness. These are the process. Yeah. So basically, Srila Prabhupada mentioning here, just like we are in the battle, sometimes the enemy is hiding. Yeah. But if we know the position of our enemy, so we can shoot arrows or we can shoot gun to drive away the enemy, to kill the enemy. So similarly, now Krishna is giving us the information that the greatest enemy is lust. And where is that lust? Where is that enemy? Is in our mind, is in our senses, is in our intelligence. So what to do now? Prabhupada advised us, utilize the mind, the senses, and our intelligence to serve Krishna. Yeah. So in that way, we can control our mind, our senses, and our intelligence. Yeah. Yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasamat parha ananyanaiva yogina mam dhyayanta upasate. Yeah, mam dhyayanta upasate. Always use our dhyaya, means meditation. So our mind in the service of the Lord. And then yetu sarvani karmani, use all our senses to work for Krishna. So in that way we can conquer our enemy in the form of lust. All right, text number 41. Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So this lust is actually the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Yeah. Balawan Indriya Gramo Vidwan Samapikarsati. Even though one is, aware of rules and regulation in the Shastra, Balawan Indriya Gramo Vidwamsam, because the senses, when the senses is fluctuated by lust, so we cannot think properly. We tend to follow our lust than following our knowledge, knowledge that we have. All right. Text number 42. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Yeah. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind, and senses, will be automatically engaged. Yeah. Therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution of the whole problem. Yeah, Krishna is giving us understanding here that the matter, superior than matter, is the mind, because mind is subtle. Yeah. and then mind is higher than the senses. Okay, and then intelligence still higher than the mind, and the soul is higher than everything. Yeah, higher than the intelligence. So if we just engage the soul, ourselves, by understanding ourselves to be the servant of the Lord, so the whole problem will be solved. Yeah. The last one. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Yeah. Desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned souls. But the strength of Krishna consciousness, but by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by material senses and mind. By steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity, this is sum and total of this chapter. All right. So just to summarize the third chapter. So in the third chapter, continuing the second chapter, after Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna about the Sthita Pragya and then Buddhi Yoga. So now Arjuna is asking, what about those who are unable to work to perform Buddhi Yoga? Then what to do? So Krishna explained, starting from the Karma Kanda. Yeah, of course, Arjuna in the beginning, he was bewildered that karma and gyan not suitable. Therefore, because karma and gyan is not suitable, then how Krishna is giving me two different instructions. One hand, Krishna asked me to perform my duty, inducing me to fight. Another hand, he's instructing about gyan. Then we are not the doer. So therefore, Arjuna was asking, please, just tell me one thing, you know. And then after explaining about karma, karma yoga, niskama karma, so Krishna come back to the level of karma kanda, because not everybody is ready to perform spiritual activities, karma yoga. So karma kanda is okay for those who are not ready to perform Krishna consciousness, because by worshipping the demigods gradually, those who are sincerely worshipping the demigods, they will be elevated to the platform of karma yoga, and slowly they connect themselves to Krishna. And then karma, more emphasized by the Lord, that karma means you connect yourself to Krishna and don't be attached with the result of one's activities, of your activities. And further explanation about karma, although a transcendently situated person has nothing to do anymore, has nothing to do anymore, still in order to show good example for the people, so you must act, O Arjuna. And then Krishna started explaining about the three modes. And then Arjuna was asking, how can we, being forced by, something is forcing from within, as if we don't want to do it, but still we are being forced. And Lord Krishna is explaining about lust, which is appear from Rajogun. Yeah, Rajoguna Samudbhava. Lust is our greatest enemy. Therefore, be careful. Yeah, this is your enemy. So I thank you very much. I'm taking your extra time for this chapter. So we finish up the third chapter. And then, so after explaining about karma, what is the next level of the yoga ladder is Gyan. And that's chapter 4 about Jnana. Okay. So were there any questions before we close? At least one question, if there is. I will not take any more questions. If there is question, you may ask. Or if there's no question, please sleep early, get up early, make a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned. So we'll resume our class tomorrow. Kindly read the fourth chapter as much as possible. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.